Alex, you alright?
It was arrogant expectations on my part that got us into this situation.
Yeah, I understand how you feel. There's always going to be expectations with reactions, but we just show up and we say how we feel, and we try our best to have a good time.
Is it possible that us two, you and I, have grown so jaded and so cynical that we've outgrown our usefulness? Would that constitute as a joke?
Well, we may be jaded, we may be cynical, but at the end of the day, there's always going to be things that people are going to expect from reactors.
Well, as you know, I am not a reactor.
Alex, you want to know something? Every reactor is a reactor.
I find that remark insulting.
Alex, you know this about me. A lot of people know if they're fans of the channel, but if you don't, a couple of my favorite movies are Inception and Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory. And both of those movies I have very special experiences with. Inception was the first ever movie I saw in IMAX. I saw it freshman year of high school, and that was like the click for me of like, I think I love movies, and it was a very special experience. Willy Wonka, one of those movies I saw as a kid, watched it over and over and over, right? And I knew all the songs, and I knew it. So to this day, I still think those are both very good movies, but the experience of watching them makes them special to me. And, we got a lot of takes about this movie about, I saw this movie for the first time when I was 10 with my dad in the theater. This was the first Star Trek I saw in the theater, all these things. And when I show somebody Inception or Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, of course, I think they're good movies. I want them to think it's a good movie. But I know when I show that to them, that regardless of the quality of the movie, I will never be able to replicate that experience that they had. And I think, for me, the biggest thing that was missing from this movie for me is that I didn't see it when I was 10 with my dad in the theater. And what I mean by that is there was really no magic here for me in this movie. I love Star Trek. I love the original series. It's my favorite show of all time. And some of the movies gave me that magic, regardless if they were my favorite ones or not. And this one, it just was nowhere to be found. And maybe it's because I'm about to be 30 years old and watching it in my basement as an adult, for a YouTube channel. I don't know. But I don't want to say that that's the entire reason people love it. I know a lot of people love this movie. And by not loving it, we're kind of probably in the minority of people. But I just feel like that's kind of the difference, I think, between you and I. I like this movie as a movie. It's fine. I think it's a fine movie. Star Trek-wise, it just didn't really feel that magical feeling that Star Trek gives me. But I think you just hate the movie. Is that correct?
No, I don't hate the movie. I just knew it was the final one, and as I'm watching it, an hour in, and I'm watching Kirk hit this species in its genitals. Oh, I'm just like, and on my rewatch. It was like exactly at an hour. I'm like, so this is how it ends. And shortly after that, where they're just trudging through the snow with like multiple shots, great shots of it in the snow. I'm like, guys, it's ending. It's over. But it's well shot, well directed. I like the action set pieces with like the Enterprise with the thing blown up in it. But in terms of our characters and the story and what they decided to do with it being the last movie, I'm like, this is it? I mean, and when you're talking about the magic, I'm sure people had great magic with this. Grew up with TOS, this is it. Ending, their version of their Avengers Endgame, with the signatures at the end. I'm like, oh, this is great. Similar to what I had with Revenge of the Sith when I was 10 years old. And I can look back at that movie and say, yeah, this movie has a lot of flaws, as an adult. And I just felt no magic during this movie. I felt magic with the motion picture, Search for Spock, and even Wrath of Khan. Like, I felt magic watching those. I felt nothing during this one. Like, 40 minutes in, I'm like, oh no. I found something. I went to a store. I actually found the Book of World History, according to Star Trek and Nicholas Meyer. Here, I found this. Here it is. CNN's Cold War documentary. And I just want to say it up front, just because something references the Cold War doesn't make it a good thing. It's like, Praxis is like Chernobyl. Kronos is like the Soviet Union. I'm like, okay, fine. Does that make it a good movie?
I was gonna say, if I read this, why I like The Hunt for Red October
I paid $10 for that.
for that joke.
I drove out of my way to pick that up for that joke. So I hope someone out there enjoyed it. When in reality, it probably made people. And speaking of, it's probably only you too. It's just you and I here. There's no one on the other end of that screen.
I agree with a lot of what you said. We're gonna go through the movie, kind of sequentially, rewatching it because I did rewatch it. I think you did too before the
Yeah,
discussion. So it wasn't just our reaction. I went back and rewatched it, and I will say, the it has a decent first act. Like the first act of the movie, I was in it. We'll go through it. I still want to just talk like generally here for a little bit, but like the first act, like it's a Star Trek movie. Things are going, I have problems and there's stuff I like, but that second act is really where it just goes off the rails. And if there's anything that's very difficult for a movie to do is go off the rails and then like bring you back in. And I think the difference was, did I love the third act of the movie? No. But to me, the third act of the movie just became like a standard Star Trek thing with things I liked and things I didn't like. I felt like for you, there was no saving it. Like I felt like from the winter planet scenario with the Klingon jail or whatever, you were out. And I'm curious on your rewatch if that changed at all when it came to the third act of the movie, if you had any different thoughts. We'll get more in detail there, but just overall, was there any difference for you in watching the movie each time?
I like the smaller things better in my rewatch. I loved the dialogue scenes. And the shots of Kirk and Spock's in the conference room, and it's just empty, and it's just those two talking from across. Little conversation when Spock and Kirk are back, where they're talking about being extremists. I love that conversation. As much as I hate, racist Kirk, but even when he's in his quarters by himself, he has great lines.
How on earth can history get past people like me?
Those are the things I liked, but just overall, is seeing our characters, like with the Klingon dinner, and just, once they all beam back aboard their ship, and just like, oh, did you see the way they ate? And just dropping all these, like, borderline races. Like, this isn't the crew that, I was going to say we grew up with, but this isn't the crew I've grown to love.
Thank God.
Did you see the way they ate?
Just seeing them act like this is insane to me. It's hard for me to believe. And in terms of like second act, third act, the whole Scooby-Doo mystery thing, I'm just not bought in on. I'm like, it was obvious from the start. You have three antagonistic characters. You have Valeris, who they just introduced, and she ends up being the rat. The one named character on the Enterprise they just introduced. What? You have Chang, who's like antagonistic the entire time.
That's Christopher Plummer, right?
That's Christopher Plummer,
Yeah.
right? And then that Admiral Cartwright, the guy in the beginning, who's like, "Oh, let them die," and then Kirk agrees, and they all end up being bad. It's like, oh, who would have thought?
I must protest. To offer Klingons safe haven within Federation space is suicide.
When I say third act, what I'm thinking of is the reveal of it being Valeris and all that.
Oh, okay.
That's like, to me, the end of the second act, and then
Okay.
the third act becomes after they figure it out. The going to the conference, the ship battle with Captain Sulu and the cloaked Klingon ship, the stuff that happens with Red Foreman and the attempted assassination, all of that. On my rewatch, again, we'll talk about it, but I was watching it just thinking, like, if this wasn't Star Trek, like if this was just a movie, yeah, this is fine. Like I was just like, okay, yeah, I see what they're doing. Again, it wasn't that magic. And then they tried to like hook me in at the end with that scene of them on the bridge, and like, yeah, of course that's like, it's awesome. It's emotional. It's the last time this crew, and they're clearly aware of it at this point, is like on the bridge, and then we see their signatures and everything, and all that. That's great, but I just feel like you can't just throw it at the end of this mediocre space action movie. That was kind of my takeaway from it. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, yeah, the second act, I'm much more forgiving than you. There are definitely things I really liked we'll get to, but just from a story perspective, this is not 2.5 hours. Like, you do not have all the time in the world. It's like, it's just barely 2 hours. It's like a little less than 2 hours.
49, yeah.
And it just goes completely off the rails in what seems like a completely different movie. So we'll talk about all of that. But I just found it very interesting that, again, it feels different. That, can I say what we're saying here about like any of the other Star Trek movies? No. Even 5, it's such a mess, but it doesn't have like this specific, weird second act. It at least delivered something different. It didn't just try to do, Nicholas Meyer comes back, do Wrath of Khan again. Like, they at least did something different. I just think it was personally a miss, unfortunately. So we can just start here from the beginning. So
Let's complain right away. Michael Dorn in the credits.
yeah, you're alone on. I mean, it's a movie. What do you expect? I mean, I think your level of expectation for that is, I know what you want.
What? No way! Oh my god! Oh my god!
You know, pro wrestling doesn't have credits, but like it's a movie. Like, I mean, are you really gonna expect them to not
I
have
mean, if
opening
I
credits?
saw No Way Home and say, Tobey Maguire, Andrew Garfield in the opening credits. Say,
Sure,
oh,
yeah.
Well, so we have Sulu, who's captain of the USS Excelsior, and I totally forgot, but it is the ship from Star Trek 3.
Oh, cool.
That
okay.
that sucks. Yeah, that they purposely sabotaged, where the Enterprise escapes and they try to go get him, but the ship craps out because Scotty
Took his stuff?
sabotaged it. Yeah,
That's cool.
I didn't remember that, but I love Captain Sulu in this movie. He had his own captain's lines that I really liked. Like, "Sir, the ship will fly apart. Fly it apart, then." I'm like, there you go, Sulu.
I loved this whole opening. One of my favorites. And here's the thing, like we're gonna shit on some of this movie, and like we do that for everything. But like, there's a lot of this movie again that where we're gonna get to that I really enjoyed this, and like that's why it sucks. Like that, not that's not why the movie sucks. That's why it sucks that I didn't love it and didn't feel that magic, because there's so much in here I really liked. I loved the opening with Captain Sulu. I mean, this is like perfect. It's like, how do you open the movie? You open with a different ship, but it's a character we know, but now he's a captain for the first time ever that we've seen. And then you get the Janice cameo.
Janice, yeah.
Janice Rand, Grace Lee Whitney, I think is her name.
Send to Klingon High Command. This is Excelsior, a Federation starship.
And so that's awesome. That was like our first big pop. And then they have, you introduce, whatever's going to go on. So I love that whole opening. And I think George Takei in this movie is great as his role. And this isn't the beginning, but I love him throughout the whole movie, and the fact that they don't do anything to like ruin it. Because so many times in movies of properties, they'll do something and then ruin it. We either like kill the character, or do something, or Sulu gets framed and arrested, or no, it's like they just set him up, they gave him his captain's role, and he's just peacefully a captain at the end of the movie, and that's it. And it's like, thank you, you gave me that at least. You gave me Captain Sulu, and that was awesome.
Comes in to help a little bit. It's mentioned in the takes that they wanted like Sulu to like have the thing to figure out to shoot the thing with the tailpipe. Then they were like, oh, they don't want Sulu bailing out Kirk.
Oh yeah, and I read some of that in the takes too. Yeah, but the whole opening was great, and then we cut to, and again, I'm gonna give credit where it's due. Nicholas Meyer. I don't know if I've seen any of his non-Star Trek films, to be honest, but he's a good director. He can shoot it well, and we cut to San Francisco, but at night. And it looks beautiful. And it's just a great little different thing to do, because we've seen that San Francisco shot before. Like in the motion picture and stuff, like we've seen that other times. So now this time it's just like a beautiful night shot of like the futuristic San Francisco. Looks great. The streak of Kirk's hilarious reveals in these movies, I just love. I don't know all of them, but like motion picture, just him in the window, Another great one here, it shows San Francisco, then it just cuts to like the stage with no one in the shot, and then William Shatner just walks in. It's like, oh, like everyone's just following him. I just love that his reveals in the movie are all ridiculous. I think the best one was probably 5 with him rock climbing, and then like you're like, is that Kirk? And then you see his face.
yeah. I mean, Wrath of Khan is definitely the most epic, but the most hilarious is definitely that one for sure. So they bring everyone in, and everyone's like, Uhura's talked about she had a seminar she had to do, and Kirk's like, oh, I think they're throwing a retirement party for us. It's like, I don't think so. They all sit down. The Admiral comes in and they're like, oh, where's Spock? And like Spock's kind of like the front runner for this whole thing. And so the moon of Praxis, the Klingon moon Praxis, has exploded, Chernobyl, and the Klingons have 50 years of life left. And then this Admiral Cartwright guy, oh, let them die, they're savages. I'm like, oh, there's a Starfleet Admiral for you.
Yep.
Oh, how surprising. And then Kirk's like, I agree, should let them die. I'm like, excuse me? What? Because he's mourning his son David. Remember his son David, the guy he dropped off with his mother for his entire life.
Never raised, yeah.
Yeah, never raised, and didn't even recognize him when he saw him in Wrath of Khan, and they hung out for like a week, and then he died in Star Trek 3.
Yeah.
And when he was killed by a rogue Klingon, there's an episode of TOS called Balance of Terror. What happens? There's no room for bigotry on the bridge. Keep it in your court. Whatever.
Here's the thing. This is where we're going to disagree the biggest. I had no problem with the racism thing, because one, as much as I love for everything to connect to the show, it's a movie. And the movie has to set up a plot. If it portrays the character, that's bad. But I don't think it portrays the characters. You said there's no room for bigotry on the bridge. The Klingons aren't on his bridge. If a Klingon was on Kirk's bridge, I don't think he'd be racist towards him. He hates Klingons. And here's the weird thing about racism, okay, in sci-fi. Yes, it's racism. Klingons are not human. But then later on in the movie, what does Kirk say? Guess what, Spock? Everyone's human. And that's him learning. And before that, though, it's never been set up in Star Trek, and this is very weird, but it's the fact of the matter, like, when you're racist to somebody, we're both human beings, but they're a different race of human. A Klingon it's an alien. It's something different. Now, is that, maybe you just use a different word? Is that just a different word?
You know what they're representing.
I know what they're going for, but here's my point. I 100% believe that almost everyone in Starfleet would hate Klingons, like how a racist person would hate someone of a different race. Is that, like, correct? No. But that's what that's the lesson of the movie, is that it's not correct. So I'm perfectly okay with it, and I disagree that Kirk would not have any type of antagonistic feelings towards Klingons. Now, on an individual level, if he meets a Klingon, if he has like an enemy scenario, I don't think he's individually going to hate people. But I think I even said in our reaction when like you brought it up, and I was like, yeah, well, they're setting this up so that they can pay off the movie. So to me, I just had no problem.
I don't agree that that's the arc they should have gone with Kirk.
Sure, but
I hate that. Kirk, for me in TOS, Kirk has always been the guy in the middle. Spock is logic. Bones is the extremist of emotion. And they come together, and Kirk's the guy in the middle. And seeing Kirk so far towards like the Bones side, if Bones was racist towards Klingons, I'd buy that. You know what I mean? I mean, Bones is openly racist to Spock.
So then let me ask this: was it just Kirk, or was there? Are you?
No, the entire crew felt that way.
No,
too.
I know. I'm asking: are you mad about just Kirk, or is it because you just said it'd be okay if it was Bones? But like, so are you mad at everybody?
If it was just Bones, but the fact it was everybody. Like, it was like, whoa, guys. Like, I remember getting upset just seeing the chief, like, give an odd look to Data's daughter.
Yeah,
you know
or in the Cardassians, too.
Yeah, or the Cardassians, too. It's like, whoa, and, like, just seeing our crew act like this, it just put a bad taste in my mouth.
That's actually a really good point. I don't want to go too much on a diatribe, but the Wounded, it's kind of the same story with Chief, where he has this racism towards Cardassians, and then we find out why does he feel that way because of this thing that happened in his past. Like, does that excuse how he feels? No. But it's kind of the same story here. I actually would go the other way as you. If everyone on the Enterprise was, like, hunky-dory with Klingons and was, like, cool with it, and then Kirk was like, no, they killed my son, I hate them, then I would think it doesn't make any sense. The fact that they all kind of feel this way, except Spock, who has no emotion or suppresses his emotion, I think falls in line with what most people in Starfleet would think. Worf is the only Klingon in Starfleet, and he's not there yet. There are no Klingons in there, and they hate the Klingons. I just feel like it's. I'm not saying it's the story I would have told, but that's the story the movie's telling, and I believe it for the most part. So, I mean, if you don't believe it, you don't believe it. Like, there's nothing the movie can do at that point. If you're out on it from the first scene, and you're not alone, by the way, like, there's plenty of patrons who brought this up that they hated this too. If you're out on it from the first scene, then you're just not going to, you don't like the story, and that's fine. But, like, I was like, okay, like, let's see what happens. Now, if the movie did a terrible job with telling that story, then I would be like, yeah, they did it. But I think with, the way they did that, one of the few things I'll give the movie credit for is that we see Kirk go from having this bitterness and this anger towards Klingons to not the end of the movie with you restored the faith of my son, but the scene he has with Spock later on where they talk about it. And Spock is the opposite. He never suspected Valeris because she's a Vulcan. So it's the opposite of racism, and they're coming from these two different ends of like, I was wrong, no, I was wrong. Oh, let's meet in the middle. Treat everyone the same. And so, yeah, I'll give credit for that.
Yeah, it just didn't work for me because Kirk was always supposed to be a guy who's always teetering towards one side or the other and seemed so far on the other side. And me, a child of an absent father, if I was killed by Klingons and my dad all of a sudden started hating Klingons in the afterlife, I'd be like, Dad, what are you doing? Like, do you really?
Yeah, I didn't think about it from the David angle, honestly, because I couldn't give less of a shit about David.
Yeah, it's like, really, Dad? It's like, no, you don't. It's like, you're coping here.
It's absolutely written because the movie needed it to be written that way.
I just don't think that's the arc they should have gone with Kirk. With the big, payoff at the end. I'm not racist anymore. I don't hate Klingons. It's like we're already and talk about the whole Undiscovered Country being like the future. I fucking hate that. And the fact that they reveal it that early on, it's like, oh, that's what the Undiscovered Country is, the future. Newsflash, we're already in the future. And the whole idea of Star Trek is, moving forward. That's already been the gimmick. And you're like, we already knew that.
Yeah, I get it, man, but I think you're looking at it from like a TNG perspective, where like everything's like the Klingons are in this peace deal and everything's great. Obviously, there's still problems, but like just so like an example, this happens a little bit later on, but like the Klingon dinner, like that's one of my favorite scenes when they're all just sitting there talking about their different opinions on this supposed they're trying to come and make peace.
Planets have a sovereign claim to inalienable human rights.
Human rights. The very name is racist.
That type of conversation, that's what Star Trek's about, is having the conversation, not just assuming we're already past it, you know, and everything's
good,
great. And I just feel like you said that's not the way they should have gone with Kirk. That's totally fine, but then you wouldn't have liked any version of the story then, which is fine, but then like the movie itself is never going to, you just aren't going to like that story no matter what.
Oh yeah, I think this movie shouldn't have been what it was at all. I feel like it should have been something completely different.
So when I'm looking at it from, this is what the movie is, and this is why I like this and why I don't like this, I'm more so taking it from the standpoint of like, this is what the story was told in the movie, and I thought they did that part of the story well. But obviously, if you just don't want that story, then yeah, I mean, there's nothing really to even say about the execution of it. Who cares about the execution? You didn't want it executed. So, you know what I mean? That's kind of different than, you know, we always talk about the execution. There's no way they would have executed this unless you can tell me an example of how they could have done it to where you would have liked it anyway.
Well, no, I think they should have gone with something completely different. So maybe like Picard has just, you know, tainted my.
Well, I was going to say that too when I said the TNG perspective. You're thinking of Picard. I think you're kind of painting some of Picard onto Kirk here.
Yeah,
not all the way, but.
And there's definitely been things that Kirk has done in the past that I haven't agreed with. You know, whether it's shoot him or whether it's. It's funny. I was doing like research on old episodes and the obsession. I remember Kirk. He regretted not shooting fast enough, so maybe that's why he said shoot him in Star Trek V.
So moving on from that aspect, the other big aspect you've kind of already brought up in this movie. This is something I think we're going to be much more in agreement on. The introduction of Valeris. Now, I actually did see some patron takes about how this was originally supposed to be Saavik, and there were some pretty fiery discussions in the patron takes about people taking sides. I am 100% on the side of this should have been Saavik.
Yes.
It would have been so much better, and just from the mystery standpoint, I'm not even saying like anything about that character or Robin Curtis or whoever would have been that played it, but you know, nothing against this woman who played Valeris. I mean, dress this woman up and make her Saavik, I don't care. But just from a character perspective, at least it's someone we've seen before, so it wouldn't be an instant like, oh, it's them. When we were watching the movie, I didn't even like want to say like maybe it's Valeris, because I just thought to myself that'd be the most obvious person that it can't be. And it was.
And it was, yeah.
You already
I brought it up that every person who's antagonistic ends up being, it's like, what? Saavik would have been a much better choice. One, she's been in more than one film. Two, maybe they not retcon, but sneak in something where her and David started to become, you know, close, like almost like lovers, and she was with him when he died. It's like, oh, that could have been a nice twist, and like the whole thing's leading up to Kirk being, you know, the racist blah 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 towards Klingons, and then Saavik comes out totally like they killed, you know, the one man I loved and all this. That could have been such better choice, but no, they introduced this new Vulcan who's fine, I guess, but like
Kim Cattrall,
yeah, just
fine, yeah.
Rewatching the movie, it's like even more painfully obvious that it's her, and she has an earring.
You mentioned earlier when you were talking about the things you liked, you said the little things, and I agree. There's a lot of little things I did like here, and that goes for Valeris too. So there were two things in particular with her character I did enjoy here in her introduction. The first is the scene where Kirk is recording a captain's log, and then she interrupts him and walks in. Now that comes into play later in the movie, but I liked it because we've never seen, as far as I remember, like a straight up interruption, like maybe like a knock at the door and stuff, but just like someone doing a captain's log and then someone just standing there, you know, listening. And it's one of those things that like, oh yeah, they're like sitting there recording those. Like it would make sense that someone could just listen. That was something new we hadn't seen. And on that same note, the other thing with it too is Vulcans aren't supposed to lie. And then throughout the movie, you know, Vulcans never bluff. You know, throughout the movie, she sees Spock lie.
A lie?
An error.
And then later on when she lies, and he's like, a lie? A choice. But that's set up earlier here in the movie when things first start to go on, and there's like somewhat like radiation energy. It was right before the rocket shoots off. And Kirk's like...
You know anything about a radiation surge?
Sir?
So she doesn't lie. She doesn't say no. She just says, sir, to like avoid lying until later on in the movie after she sees Spock lie and then, you know, decides to lie or whatever. Little things like that. Really good. Like it was like that's nice, and those are things I caught on the rewatch more than on the initial watch. But I did like that. Overall, she's probably for me the biggest flaw of the movie. Ken came back to our Patreon specifically for this reaction, and he put in his patron take, the biggest flaw of the movie is that it's a whodunit with only one suspect. I think that's spot on. I mean, that is... And if you're okay with just like sidestepping that and being like, okay, whatever, I still love the movie, like I guess you can do that, but that's pretty big deal, like to me. So,
Yeah, that was the biggest flaw, but that is a good point, and I do like Spock's growth about, he's always been an extremely logical person, but even early in the film, it's like Valeris' logic is the start of wisdom, it's like it's not the end-all, be-all here. That shows how much Spock has grown since you watch, because I rewatched like the Galileo 7, and like Spock is like painfully logic in that one. It's like, all right, Spock, chill out a bit, but it's nice to see how much he's grown as a person, as a character. In a good way, unlike Kirk. Oh, even before that, it's like, oh, who could believe that a Vulcan would be, the rat or the liar? It's like when, in the previous movie before this, Spock's brother, Sybok, was literally a Vulcan who went against traditional Vulcan values. It's like, and then if you're an avid watcher of the franchise, if you're watching TNG, where like Spock's friend, the Romulan, who's a Vulcan offshoot, ends up being the rat. And it also like helps explain why Spock was so okay with like, yeah, it's logical that it was him.
The way that you're talking about it's very interesting. I noticed even in the reaction, there were certain things where like they brought up a shapeshifter and you were like, you met a shapeshifter in the first episode. Like bringing up things like that. And, for me, coming into these, all the movies, but specifically this one, but all of them, yeah, of course I wanted to be true to the characters and all those things. And I think probably the best part about the movie is that when it comes to our main cast, like these actors are like, they're locked in. Like they are these characters in terms of like how they act with each other, and their chemistry is all excellent, and all of that normal stuff. They're all awesome. So I think that's probably the best part, is that you have this group of actors who clearly still have the passion to do this, even though they've aged. But I don't really hold it to that standard really of like, I guess I go into it more like, I'm not thinking about Star Trek V. It's like, I'm not thinking about these even episodes of TOS. It's like, it is connected to that, absolutely. But I guess for me, going into it more as like a singular thing, as just this movie, what is this movie doing? There was a patron take from Aramis Calsut. It was actually about Star Trek V, which is hilarious. Wrong movie. But he did say at the start of his take, I don't think the show translates that well to movies. And to be honest, I agree. Like, after seeing all 6, like, I love Star Trek 3, but Star Trek 3 is not an episode of TOS. Like, the movie is about searching out for Spock who has died in a previous film. I love the motion picture. You could maybe argue that's like a episode of TOS type plot, but there's no way they could have done what they did in the motion picture, right? So it feels like the movies where they more so try to just like be an episode of TOS are the ones I don't really care for. This one included. 5's just kind of weird. And then like, but Wrath of Khan specifically is the other one where it's kind of like, oh yeah, it's a sequel, it's a Khan sequel episode. But like, if I was watching TOS, I would have just been like, yeah, I don't really care for this episode that much. Except it's a movie. So it just like feels really weird. And like, that's the vibe I got from this movie, is that like, it would have just been a TOS episode I didn't like that much. Like, except it's one of 6 movies. Like, I guess I prefer more of like the, like, I don't even know how to explain it. Like take the characters, but do a movie. Like, don't do a TOS episode. Like, do a movie. Do Search for Spock.
I agree with you. This felt like a stretched out TOS episode and not a good one.
Yeah.
Yeah, like Search for Spock, that was a film. That was like, I need to go see this on the big screen. Wrath of Khan, motion picture especially. Like this, I can imagine just seeing on my TV, condensed down to 40, 50 minutes.
And
cut out all, this could have been on TV.
And but except it's worse because it's years later. They're all older. There's obviously the elements of the story we don't like, but even like putting the specifics aside, like, it probably in some ways would have been better as an episode when like they were all in their prime, and like imagine an episode of TOS where Kirk and Bones get arrested by the Klingons. Like, that's almost like something we saw in TAS. Like, okay, that could be sweet. But now decades later as the final movie, it's like, that's why the second act feels so off the rails. It's like, why are we seeing them get exiled and be in this Klingon prison and meet this weird shapeshifter woman like in the last Star Trek movie? Like, I want the epicness of this movie to match the epicness of the motion picture. And, Search for Spock, Voyage Home, to even to a certain extent, Wrath of Khan, like, they were epic. They were movies. And this just didn't feel that big for me.
Yeah. And while it's fresh in my brain, the shapeshifter, not my favorite part, especially it's like, just got ratted out right away. And
it's terrible.
Yeah, just awful. How great would it have been, the whole shapeshifter thing? like who's the rat on the ship, right? Where like the entire time, we're halfway through the movie, we find out there's a shapeshifter, and one of the main cast members was actually the shapeshifter. And then the actual comes in, the actual character who was like kidnapped breaks out, has a superhero entrance, and there's this whole crazy like what instead of this obvious,
And that could have given them an excuse to make it one of the crew members.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Instead of like, oh, this named character we just found out. Who would have thought?
Wow, yeah, I didn't even think about that. That would have been 100% a great way to use a shapeshifter. Where this one, again, I mean, the whole second, we're going to talk about the second act here in a second, but the whole thing goes off the rails. But she's probably one of my least favorite parts because she ultimately ends up not really, she is there to get them from the prison to the next thing, and then she gets killed. So that's her purpose, whatever. It was played by Iman, who I guess was like a celebrity, like it was a model at that time or something. It was like a guest casting, like not stunt casting quite, but like she's known and like, I don't care. I don't know who that is. So it's like it did nothing for me. The whole romance with her and Kirk, I guess it's fun to have Kirk have like one last little fling with an alien, but it led to some funny moments with Bones.
And I like their conversation on the bed, and I'm glad Bones got to do something because I often feel Bones is reverted to like the comedic, like the almost the Scotty, where it's like he's the comedic effect, like the
Who's holding up the damn elevator?
Yeah, which is great. And also another sidebar of this, I love when they're in the Klingon court and Chang asks him, it's like, how's your medical status? Oh, besides the touch of arthritis, pretty good. And there's one Klingon like in the back, and Bones is like, because someone finally laughs at his jokes. No one ever laughs at Bones' jokes, so Bones is like, hey, I made someone laugh, yeah. And similar to his great scene in Star Trek V, where it's like, I tried to save him, to save him. But another segue, the purple blood.
So let's talk about that sequence. So we get the rocket blast off and shoots the Klingon ship. Real quickly, let's talk about the invisible ship.
I was stuck on this pretty hard, and to the point where even Chekhov even says like, oh, why didn't they beam aboard their own ship? It's like, oh, because they had to beam it back aboard. Spock gives a reason. They had to beam it back aboard here to frame one of us. It's like, I get it. They only had 2 weeks to plan this whole thing, but you have to realize you are framing the crew of the Starship Enterprise NC-1701, the best crew that's ever been out there at this point. What do you think? You come up with a better plan than what they did? I get it. You only had 2 weeks, but what they came up with was absolute shit. It's like you didn't think they were going to figure it out. Why didn't try it on Sulu's ship or try it on another ship to frame? It's like, why would you pick the team that's 1,000-0?
Yeah, because movie, and a lot of this whole story is like because movie, and it just depends on like how much because movie are you willing to accept, and like so like I'm willing to accept the racism thing because that's the story the movie wants to tell, and I'm willing to accept this next point, so like the invisible ship, the whole thing this is even in TNG up to this point. Oh, they can cloak, but they can't shoot when they're cloaked. It's like the perfect character balancing, so you're not too OP. Well, now this one can. Why? Because movie.
A bird of prey cannot fire when she's cloaked.
This one can.
And it's just like, it's like, but I'm even willing to be like, okay, like in this one circumstance, literally the story will not work without this. So fine, because of the movie, like you can have this be the case, and it is kind of interesting, at least at the very least. They knew that was already an established thing. Like, if they would have not mentioned it at all, then I'd have been like, they can't fucking shoot when they're cloaked. What are they doing? So they knew it was a thing, and they addressed it, and they're like, well, now this one can. Okay.
When they those two guys beam over, once again being super obvious, they shoot everyone. Chang is nowhere to be seen as soon as they're done. Chang's the first one on the screen. How could you do this to us, Kirk? It's like, and another thing. So space travel has been around in this universe 300, 400 years. Klingons are great warriors. You'd think they travel in space. They should have a shot of the weapons leaving their holsters. You'd think, just maybe, that there's never been an accident where a ship got hit and their artificial gravity went out. You'd think there'd be a holster. Even cops in today's world have a clip on top they have to undo. It's like you'd think a warrior race like the Klingons would be a little more prepared in case something like that happened, because like their weapons slowed out and they're just like not even trying. They're just
You know what I mean? They're not even like, shit, something's happening. You know,
Yeah.
like we were just shot at. They're all just. But
My whole problem with that sequence wasn't. I mean, like the anti-grav stuff is cool, whatever. Just the CGI fake blood was not good.
Yeah.
And it's one of those things where people have excuses for it. I've already seen some in the patron takes. If you need an excuse for it, your favorite episode, Transfigurations. If you need an excuse for a visual effect and it's not good, just don't do it. Just don't do it. Just don't do the cheap-looking blood. Them floating around, you could do probably like a little wound or something, or phaser shots we've seen in the past, burnt clothes, whatever. Do what you need to do to like get the rating. You don't want to be rated R, but just don't do the fake. But that's what. I love the 90s in a lot of ways, 90s movies, but sometimes, I mean, they just went overboard with like visual effects. I thought that was an example of it. It kind of takes me out of the whole thing because the idea of it is pretty cool. Like they're getting shot and stuff in this like anti-gravity situation, which we don't see a lot of in Star Trek, but then the fake blood like bubbling around, I was just kind of like, eh.
Yeah, if you're gonna do that blood, have it with Bones trying to save Kirk, Bones trying to save Gorkin in a raw emotional moment, not this like just to have an effect where it goes psh at the end. It's like I don't need it. Just have a little bit. I don't need this giant pool of blood in my face. I'd rather have the pool of blood on Gorkin when he's like trying to save him. And another clue that it's Valeris is that she's the one that suggests the Romulan ale. And that's one of the first things that Gorkin brings up, and not Gorkin, Chang brings up in his trial.
Yeah, on the rewatch, I caught all of those, the Romulan ale, the listening in on his log, and then they have the log, when they play it. All those things make sense on the rewatch now. If this was a movie or an episode of the show we liked, we would be giving that credit. Like, oh, all those things were there we didn't catch the first time, so I'm not going to act as if, I'm not giving them the credit.
Yeah, cinematographer was the same guy from Search for Spock, and I got to say, that shot of Kirk and Bones in court, amazing. I love that with like the everyone around in that cylinder.
And then when they're rising up, too.
Oh, yeah, it's like, gotta give credit to that. That was wonderful. We're stupid, right? We miss things all the time. But you put Michael Dorn's name in the credits, like, okay. And then you have him pretty much look identical to himself as a Klingon. I'm like, okay. Then his name is fucking Worf. It's like, what do you think the audience is doing right now? Michael Dorn, who's that?
Yeah.
Oh, Klingon. Oh, Worf. I know who that is. It's like, fucking hell.
It's like, is it cool to see Michael Dorn? Yes. But why would you name him Worf? As far as I'm concerned, in canon at this point, it has been confirmed in different places that it's his grandfather. But one thing's for sure, it wasn't in the damn movie, so you don't confirm what's going on. His name is Worf, and we're in Season 5 of TNG. There are people who commented on our patron takes, Alex. These are like real Star Trek fans.
Who thought
they thought it was Worf. And that's not their fault. That's the movie's fault. Besides him, I mean, he looks kind of different because all the Klingons in this movie look fucking terrible. But besides that, I mean, he looks like Worf. His name is Worf. Like, what are you doing? It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen.
Imagine watching Revenge of the Sith and there's a character in the movie played by Harrison Ford named Han Solo. But it's not our Han Solo. He's like dressed slightly different.
Again, is it cool to see Michael Dorn play another? Like, if you want to take a TNG actor and have him play a different character, even if it's the same race, like a Klingon, like, yeah, that could be cool. But just at least give him a different name, because let's say his name was John. That's not a Klingon name, but like whatever. His name's John. It's like, okay, that's not Worf. Like, it immediately confirms it. You picked the one name where he might be Worf, and then you never confirm who he is. It is like, and this isn't like, oh, well, it's 1991. No, I know that's crossing the line. Like,
just the complete fail on that part. Yeah, just insulting the audience's intelligence, which is sad because I really like that courtroom scene. But we'll get there.
Here's my thing, Alex. I think they wanted it to be Worf, and then after they made the movie, someone went up to like Nicholas Meyer and was like, hey, that doesn't make any like sense timeline wise. And Nicholas Meyer said, oh, I don't care. I don't watch TNG. Whatever. They make it his grandfather or something. They didn't give a shit. Whoever made this decision, like, oh, it'd be cool to have Michael Dorn do a cameo as a Klingon, like, that person probably had good intentions, but it just came off like the people making this movie, again, like, am I expecting them to know everything about Next Generation? Like, no, it's like it's this disconnected show. Like, give the guy a different name if he's not the same character. I think they thought it was the same character making the movie. I haven't found any evidence that they didn't think it was Worf. It was clearly, like, corrected after the fact, and it's just, like, mind-blowing to me. I will never be able to watch this movie now and not think about that. That is just like this glaring, idiotic thing.
That's probably exactly what happened, yeah. And they probably had a different makeup team, to which is why he looks a little bit different. He's also wearing a different costume. His head looked a little bit different. But I will agree, yeah, some of the Klingons just looked absolutely terrible. The worst one being the guy in Rura Penthe, like the guy with like the one eye. His looked like extremely prosthetic to the point of like, this is bad. This is really bad. And that dog thing looked awful too.
When we saw the guy from Barry and Office Space as a Klingon in Unification, I was like, that doesn't look good. And this is probably just conspiracy theory on my part. I feel like they saw what Klingons were looking like in Star Trek 6 and like made the Klingons in that episode look like that because like they wanted to like kind of get us ready. But like the Klingons here look like, I'm not going to go as far as to say maybe, you know, like TOS level or anything like early TOS, but like they are just humans with like a freaking, looks like American Psycho, you know, plastic prosthetic over their face. It looks terrible. Like, again, you have a TV show where all the Klingons look amazing on a TV show. You couldn't just replicate, you couldn't just steal like their makeup people? Like, what happened? You can tell people working on this, you know, at least had some passion for Star Trek or liked it or something. Mm-hmm. I mean, the guy made Wrath of Khan, obviously one of the, you know, the highest regarded movies. So you'd think he would, you know, have care here, but some of the stuff just came off like, again, we've made this joke about TNG. It's like, just can you have a continuity coordinator on set? Like someone that tells you what's going on?
I think they didn't have that. I think maybe someone was afraid to speak up or didn't, and they just made the movie. It's like no one stepped in and like, wait, what? Why is his name?
I wanted to say, we kind of brushed over it. Bones trying to save that Klingon. That's a great moment. That's a great scene.
I'm glad Bones got this moment because oftentimes he's just comedic effects in a lot of the movies, and seeing him his scene, I already said it, but his scene in Final Frontier and his scene in this, trying to save this guy in his courtroom scene, I'm like, yes, that is great. I needed more Bones on Kirk's shoulder. Like, I love Bones on Kirk's shoulder. You know what I mean? Because, yes, he's hilarious, but he's still that mentor figure. He's still the other side of the logic. And it got a little bit of that when they were on the planet, when they were, like, laying in the beds, just like a small amount, but I'm glad DeForest Kelly got that because that was good.
Come on, Dermot. Come on.
That was a great moment. And then it's really sad because that moment's so great. It's sad when you see Bones like realize that it's a setup and they killed him and he's like, I tried to save him. I did everything I could.
I did everything I could to save him. It's like age combined with drink. It's your fault. And then Worf, Colonel Worf, I think they called him.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's like just a complete kangaroo court. Objection! And the guy's not even paying attention to him. Yeah. Just stand. And then I love that judge guy, that old, you know.
Oh yeah, the whole Klingon court sequence, outside of the dumb Worf thing, the sequence was awesome. I loved how they had the translators. That was such an awesome thing. And I didn't even really soak that in on my first time on the rewatch. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And how they do the little thing at the beginning where he's speaking in Klingon and then it like translates to English.
And then it cuts to him speaking English.
Because like the whole time in Star Trek, we just know they have translators. Like we just accept it. But that was like that first moment of actually hearing the Klingon translate and then, oh, they have the thing. I was like, oh, that's really good.
And I hate to give a credit to the scene, but when Kirk and Bones are in Rurapenthe and that one tall guy, that looks like the guy from Allegiance. It's like, Kirk's like, oh, Universal Translator's not working. And then Marty is like, he wants to know if you're going to join the Alliance. You've got it. If you're part of the Alliance. You got it. He also wants your jacket. I don't think it'll fit.
Yeah. And that was like the first guy he fought, right?
The first
guy came out.
And back to the second fight. So there's this alien species, right, who's about to get in this fight. And he has these pants with this hole right here. Exactly where his genitals are. You'd think if you're going to get in the fight, maybe just...
I feel the same way about that as how I do the whole Uhura Klingon scene, which is another scene that a number of patrons had a problem with. And apparently Uhura also had a lot of problems.
Yeah, one of the patron texts, I saw that too. Yeah. I'm glad, because when I looked over it, that's my favorite part of the reaction when I just looked over it to you. It's like, I get it, there's a shot of the Klingon drinking, they were drunk, but you think, this is your job. You're a communications guy. And like, the most dangerous prisoners in your mind are at Rurapenthe, and you're talking to someone who can't speak your language. And like they had that terrible ADR line by Chekhov. It's like, oh, a universal translator will be recognized. It's like, oh my God. I'm pretty sure I'm gonna, in my head canon it was Nichelle Nichols, because after they do the ha ha ha, Nichelle Nichols just goes. I'm pretty sure like she thought she heard cut, or just like, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah, and apparently she had a lot of problems with just the whole racism angle too, and certain lines she didn't want to say. So
good
for her, for standing up for herself. The Klingon scene, and then also that's the same way I feel about the guy with the genitals. It's just like, yeah, it's a dumb, goofy thing. Either like you accept it or you don't. A lot of this movie is just like, I can't blame anybody. Like I'm talking to you, so I'm specifically meaning you, but just in general, I can't blame anybody where it's like, yeah, if you didn't like that or you don't buy that or whatever. And it's kind of like, I don't in every case, but some of them, like Kirk fighting that guy and kicking him in the balls, it's obviously stupid. But it's like, it's still funny because it's Kirk. What I hated was the dialogue after.
That was not his name. Not everybody keeps their genitals in the same place, Captain.
Oh, it's like the classic, like, you ruined it. It's like, oh, it's his balls. Just like,
yeah.
Thank you.
It's like, I get it. We miss things, but you don't have to spell it out that bad.
It's funny coming from us, but yeah, it's like, you ruined it.
Yeah. She might as well just said, it's his dick.
yeah, talking to Kirk and then look right at the camera.
Yeah. Wink. I know you said you didn't like the Klingons' look, but I love the Chancellor Gorkon's costume. I love that red robe he had.
Yeah, that was cool.
And then they killed him right away.
Yep.
And left us with Chang.
I thought he was going to be the dude. So, I mean, I guess credit for that, but Chang was just so bad that I'm kind of angry that they killed him. Do you think of the 6 movies, is Chang the worst villain?
Yes.
Even worse than 5? What was his name?
Sybok. Yeah, I kind of...
Sybok was fine.
I like Sybok more than Chang, yeah. It's like Sybok wasn't quoting Shakespeare the entire movie. It didn't have a to be or not to
And
be.
as much as we give Wrath of Khan, like, obviously Ricardo Montalban as Khan is like epic and,
Yeah, iconic.
Almost like Thanos level, just
Yeah,
like aura.
Oh, for sure.
Like lifting up Chekhov, badass.
Oh, and just that entrance where they all come in and like the line of all of them. It's like in the coats and everything because of all the dust. Here's a quote they got to bring up. Where's my book? This is a quote from Chang. In space, all warriors are Cold War ears. Cold War. It's like, come on.
Yeah, that's pretty bad.
That's pretty bad. Oh, let's talk about Sarek.
Yeah.
I would have much preferred, a show that he's been in twice gave a better send-off to Sarek than this own movie. Because there's a scene where the Romulan, there's a Klingon, there's a president, Red Foreman, whatever, and then there's Sarek, whose only lines in this film is, yeah, they should follow the law.
Is that his only lines?
Yeah, that's all he says.
Yeah, I forgot. I didn't forget he was in the movie, but like I wasn't even gonna bring him up if you hadn't because he does nothing.
Yeah, and, like this is the last time we see him, and like I'm just thinking like the end. I rewatched Search for Spock too, like at 1.5 speed, just like as I'm like getting ready for bed. So and I was gonna have it in the background, and as I'm watching, I'm like regular speed, I'm just watching it, and like the ending scene where it's like it's not logical to do this maneuver. It's like when it comes to my son, it's beyond logic, and like for the thing with Bones and the brain transfer, it's like and that amazing scene when Spock is like completely knocked out, and it's just Bones and Spock just by themselves in that room. It's like I can't believe I'm saying this, but I actually missed you. It's like I love this movie, God. And then this movie, and then the send. Like Sarek died off screen in that TNG episode, and it was a better send off than his last appearance in a film with all the characters he knows.
Yeah, honestly, to me, I mean, in Unification,
I prefer if he wasn't in the movie. Sorry, go on.
No, you're good. I agree. And in Unification, we actually didn't even talk about Sarek in the Unification discussion, and like that was a good scene with Picard, his last scene on camera. But to me, it's the Sarek episode. That's how I'm gonna remember him. And even in that, he's but it's like it was a good episode. And he had a great performance, Mark Leonard, and that, and then the I think is he in 4? He's in 4 at the end, right?
Yeah, he's in 4. Yeah, it's
at
like
the end with Spock.
Yeah, I think he's like, tell Mother I'm fine.
Yeah, and they have their moment.
Yeah, they have that.
They had to bring him back. That's unfortunate.
And then he was Giga Chad in Star Trek V, the young version of him.
Oh yeah, Chad Sarek.
So human.
It is funny that it was Red Foreman as the president. That is funny, but
yeah.
It has nothing to do with this movie.
Also, Christian Slater is in this movie.
Well, apparently, they're refusing to acknowledge signal to return to space dock, sir.
I don't know if you know who Christian Slater is.
I've heard the name.
He was in True Romance. He was in that robot show.
He was like a guy for a while, right?
He was a guy. He was like one of Sulu's guys on his ship.
Okay.
Valeris is the one who suggests that it's a bird of prey. I just thought that she's the one who said it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I wonder if she's like, they're on to me if I don't say something. I wonder if in her brain she's like, if I don't say something, they're going to suspect me. Maybe it was a bird of prey. And Spock's like, oh, that's a good point.
Yeah, I do think to give her character one piece of credit, besides the acting, because I thought the actress, again, was fine. But I think she does a good enough job when they're going through the investigation of not acting suspicious to the point of being like, I don't know. It's like the thing with the phaser, like she brings up how the alarm goes off. She brings up the bird of prey, which I hadn't caught that. She does enough to throw people off the scent. So like I'll give her credit there, which makes it all the more hilarious when Kirk comes back and they immediately they figure out it's her, because Kirk comes back and it's like, oh, well, let's just set up this plan.
To be fair, they just open a door and the two bodies fall, and then they're able to put it together there.
Yeah, true. But just the timing of the movie, it's funny.
Yeah, with
like
the timing,
Kirk just came back. Oh, let's figure it out. But I get it story-wise. Spock is blind, shout out Wrath of Khan, because he's blind to Valeris. Because, when he explains, he thought, she was his replacement, basically. So Kirk has to be the one to come back and kind of help it. But yeah, I wanted to say about the second act. The one positive thing about it that I did like from it was I did think it was cool to have the Kirk versus Kirk.
I can't believe I kissed you. Must have been your lifelong ambition.
Yeah.
That was really great, and their physical. We got something similar in the one TOS episode, but it was like just for a moment. It was the one Whom Gods Destroy, or no, not. I forget the name of it, with all the villains, and like they were in like the prison where the prisoners got out, and the one guy shapeshifts into Kirk.
Oh shit.
We get it for like a moment. I don't remember the name of the episode, but it was cool to see it here. So I don't think it was really executed well. Like at the end, the guy just kills her. It's like, okay.
Yeah, and my immediate thought was, that's how Kirk outsmarts him. It's him. No, it's him. No, it's him. Okay, boom. It's like, oh, that's. But I think the plan was they were going to kill them all regardless. And then the guy starts to go into his villainous monologue, that horrible-looking Klingon. Oh, you want to know who it was? It was, and they start to beam up.
The whole Kirk and Bones thing and the Klingon planet, if this was a 2.5-hour-long movie, which I don't want it to be, but if it was, okay, spend 45 minutes doing this. The movie's an hour and 40 minutes. They don't get back onto the Enterprise until, I clocked it, an hour and 19 minutes into the film. And so they have the first act, the inciting incident happens with the ship getting blown up and the guy dying. From that point, they're off the Enterprise until an hour and 19 minutes. Kirk is away from Spock. The Enterprise, all the rest of our crew are just like next to helpless on the Enterprise, basically. And it's just like, why? It's just such an odd choice to me.
Yeah. Are they searching for the uniforms? Like, oh, those uniforms must be here.
Well, they were searching for the gravity boots, and then there was that whole thing. There's the thing in the kitchen where Valeris shoots the thing, and everyone comically comes in. Did someone shoot a phaser? When we've seen this is where I'm doing your thing. We've seen phaser shot all throughout the show in TOS. No one ever freaks out.
No.
That could have been an advancement, but it's not set up. It doesn't make any sense for people to be like, "Ooh, shot a phaser."
Yeah. And then Scotty finds the uniforms in this grate in the dinner conference room, and it's like a see-through grate. You can see him. Anyone walking by could go, "Oh, what's in there?"
And that's right after Kirk and Bones come back.
It's right after.
So that's basically, there you go. Like they had come back and they haven't found these uniforms. Like they haven't found anything. And then I'm pretty sure it's the first scene when they come back. Kirk just puts it all together, and he's like, "Oh, take out the assassin." They put it all together, and then they find out it's Valeris immediately.
Yeah, phaser at close range, it would only knock him out, or it'd kill him a different way. It's like, or stun close range, it'd only do this. A little similar Balance of Terror, Wrath of Khan type battle, where it's like, oh, where are they? Where are they? And then a very kind of cute little Back to the Future 3 type scene where Spock's like, "Doctor, would you like to perform surgery on a torpedo?" And then Bones says, Spock's line, "Fascinating." I'm like, oh, that's cute. They had a nice little scene there. They get to work together on this torpedo. That's nice, because I've always wanted not a hug, but just
acknowledgement.
We're best friends here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
As much as they rag.
That's as close as they were going to do it. Yeah.
Yeah. The whole third act battle is just it's a space battle. It was good. It was fun. I did like the whole thing with Sulu coming to help, and then they kind of do the thing to reveal where the ship is, and then Sulu hits him with the rocket.
Yeah.
It was all cool. It was fine. It's just I'm not if I was super over the moon with this movie, maybe I'd be really in there for that space battle. There have been episodes of TNG where I'm getting into it for the space battle. I wasn't really that bought into this movie, so it just came off as okay, yeah, it's a space battle in a movie. It's just not really my thing, but it was done well, and I appreciated it.
Yeah, I love the shot of I don't know what it was, a torpedo going through the Enterprise that way. It's like, poof, and it's like, what? All the stuff on the inside.
And also the damage to the Enterprise you can see on the outside of it.
Yeah.
Very looks good and it's detailed. One of my favorite scenes of the movie, though, I don't want to skip over it, is that conversation with Kirk and Spock after they find out and Spock's disappointment. And I already kind of laid out, what I thought about that scene when we were talking about the racism. But, it was just really, it was just like that one last, Kirk and Spock conversation scene where they had so many times in TOS where one of the characters was, depressed or sad about something and they talked to each other. Yeah, that's just classic.
As much as I don't like, where Kirk started, I do like that conversation. That's the thing I love about this movie is just the one-on-one conversations. For the most part, A+. This classic. Like, even Kirk by himself, where early on in the movie, let them die. And then he's like, has those great line, like, how did history get past men like me? He's self-aware enough to know, like, shit, I have a problem. So I give the movie credit for that.
So now we have the conference assassination attempt, and I thought it was at least fun in our reaction. We were talking about how he just was taking forever. Like the guy's doing a speech, and he's like not shooting him.
And then Kirk tackles the president and says, "Enterprise, Kirk," and then they just never beam up.
No, really?
Yeah, they don't beam up.
Well, yeah, true, because they're still there. Yeah.
Yeah. I already brought it up in the beginning, but I just love Captain Sulu with his own, like, sir, the ship's gonna fly apart. Fly apart then. It's like, get over there, save him. And they have a nice moment, Kirk and Sulu, when they're down there and when they say goodbye. That's all fine, but Scotty gets a scene. He busts through and like shoots the Klingon assassin, falls through the window, and I think there's a little bit of red blood on him. I needed a Kirk speech. I needed him to like acknowledge his faults publicly and be like, horrible reference, but a Rocky IV, if I can change, which is funny because that's the Soviet Union or the Russians. We all can change something, rather than just my son. Who? And we made that joke. What did he say?
Yeah. What did he say? Who's his son?
And then those two aliens who weren't on the same page. One guy's clapping like this, the other one's clapping like this. It's like.
Oh, and they all, they look kind of bad, to be honest. I mean, we love practical stuff, but that was kind of like, I don't know what they were doing that day. But.
Yeah, I think they wasted like all the budget on the first guy Kirk runs into. That guy looked fine, and the blue guy looked pretty good too.
Yeah,
but everything else looked bad.
That's why I forgave it a lot too, is because the practicals were really good in that second act, and then we got to see what I assume is a Klingon Targ, the little animal. I don't know if it was just supposed to be another one or if it was a Targ, but
it looked completely different because I rewatched Search for Spock. It looked completely different than that one.
Yeah, and it also looks different from the Targ with Worf. So I don't know, but the third act it just fell flat, and then that's what leads into. When you have a third act and kind of that momentous, Kirk has had so many classic speeches. For this to be his last one in a solo TOS thing, and it falls flat, it's like, that's a bummer. And then
no speech, yeah.
And then, well, I mean, not really a speech, but he does have a little bit of a speech there at the end to the.
Yeah, it's a little nod. I mean, I looked up what he said. It's from Peter Pan. It's like, okay, cool. I'm glad it wasn't Shakespeare.
Yeah,
I'm sick of Shakespeare.
And then that's what brings it into the ending, where again, if you just like splice and you just watch that ending scene. Like, yeah, that could be emotional. That could be good. And I do like the "we're no man, we're no one" has gone before. Connecting it, that's good.
And he says, like, soon the ship will be in charge of another crew, another little TNG nod, even though
it wouldn't be
A, B, C, D. Got a little time, but it's basically a nod.
Yeah, but it's just unearned. And it's like, it sucks because, it's funny, coming off of Unification, we just talked about fan service, right? And it's like, there's good ways to do it and bad ways to do it. And like this ending with this farewell for them, it just feels... Like, that's good to do that. Like, definitely end the movie that way. But the movie kind of has to earn it. You can't just bank off of TOS and, like, the legacy. Like, the movie still needs to get you there.
This didn't feel like we're here together the final time we're saying goodbye. It felt like a TOS episode in the middle of a random season. Cut, and then the scene where it's like, this is the end. It didn't feel like, everything before that didn't feel like we're leading to the end here.
Yeah. I 100% agree. And it's like, I guess true to the show, because the finales weren't, finales, but then they try to make it a finale, and it's just like, okay.
Yeah, I know I've been hard on this film, and I know during my reaction I was visibly not entertained or pleased, but it's not shit. It's not complete shit. I don't hate it. I'm not mad, I'm just disappointed.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of trying to say up top, is that like, as a movie, and I did think you hated it, to be honest, but like, for myself, as a movie, I think it's fine. Like, it's just like a fine action movie, not really my thing, story-wise, the execution I have problems with, but it's the Star Trek element. It's the fact that, like, it's Star Trek, and it's 6. And I'm not even talking about the audience, I'm not even talking about the hype or anything. Like, I'm just talking about it's the last Star Trek TOS thing, and we love TOS, and we enjoy again all of the movies, even 5. Like, there's fun stuff in there. I'll watch some stuff from it. It's fun. Do I want to sit down and watch the whole thing all the time? No, but like, it's a fun movie, and I feel the same about this, where the movie's fine, but it's like, it's just not. I wish I could be someone who could just sit down and watch a fine movie, and like be like, wow, that's awesome. Do you get what I'm saying? It's like, I'm sorry.
For sure.
It's like, I'm sorry, I can't. Like, it was just fine. I'm not going to act like because it's 6, because it's the last one, that automatically means, like, are the signatures cool? Yeah, that's awesome. That doesn't make the movie better, So
Yeah. Nor does the fact that it's the Cold War.
it makes it worse.
Yeah. Nicholas, I'm not sure if you know this, but before this and even after this, there's a lot of events in human history that people can pull from. It wasn't just this. There's other things you can take inspiration from.
We've kind of been, doing a little bit format a little bit differently here. Obviously, we've read the patron takes before doing this discussion. We're a little bit more prepared. So we've already referenced a lot of them. So we tried to get as many as we can in the video, guys, but there was over, I think, 300 total, and a lot of them were multi-paragraph, things about why you love the movie, which is great, but like, we can't sit here and read multi-paragraph takes, so we'll try to get them in. But the main thing I just wanted to point out first was I saw so many takes from people in there that were like, unironically, like, I love 6 so much, right behind Wrath of Khan. It's between this and Wrath of Khan for my favorite. And I didn't see a single person, maybe I missed it and you saw it, I didn't see a single person in there go, hey, these guys didn't really like Wrath of Khan. Do you think they're not going to care for this? I don't know if that was in the back of anyone's mind. No one has said that to me. And before the patron takes post, like this whole time going up to this movie, the hype has been insane. I never knew until we saw the opening credits of the movie that it was directed by Nicholas Meyer.
Neither did I.
I didn't know that. And like, the whole time, I'm thinking to myself, why did everyone hype it up when this is like, it's like, of the 6 movies, it's the closest to Wrath of Khan, like same director, same tone, like the same kind of thing, more like action oriented. And it's like, did no one put it together? Like, I just feel like, was everyone's, I mean, obviously they want us to like it. So it's like, I don't know if they were just like hoping it wasn't the case and they were just like trying to think Wrath of Khan was like an aberration. But it's like, if I had known going into this, like if 6 months ago I had learned like, oh, it's like the closest of the 6 to Wrath of Khan, and it's the same director of Wrath of Khan, my hype level would have came down. And that would have been a good thing. Now, I'm not sitting here thinking the hype like ruined the movie. I hate that narrative. Like, we would have felt the same about the movie. Maybe you not as much. You definitely got affected a little bit, I think. I mean, you were saying it in the reaction, you were admitting it. But it's like, that baffled me the most. Just reading take after take of comparing this to Wrath of Khan, this and Wrath of Khan being their favorite, and then also simultaneously seeing so many takes thinking this was going to be our favorite movie. It was a little bit like, I almost felt less bad, because after watching the movie, of course I immediately feel bad. Like, fuck. Well, that reaction is not going to make anyone happy, except for the people that don't like this movie. And then I'm like, reading the takes, and I'm like, wait, guys, this is your fault. You should have saw this coming. It's like, this is like the most obvious thing.
Wrath of Khan, everything about the movie was their most controversial thing about us. Like, that's like the number one. And plus, there's been plenty of other episodes that people love that we don't. And the fact that no one saw this coming, I didn't see one person go, guys, wait a minute. Wait, hold on.
No, I did see people say they didn't like the movie. Like, I saw some takes of like, this is my least favorite of them.
No,
I don't
but
care
say
for
like,
this one.
wait, these guys might not.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
Everyone was like, oh, you guys are going to love it. And then I saw, all the ones compared to Wrath of Khan. I'm like, oh, no.
Yeah.
Oh, no.
But for me, it was kind of a relief, because my oh, no was like right after the reaction of like, oh, man, like, I wish we had liked that more. Because, like, listen, I'm being honest. Anytime we don't like something, like, we are brutally honest to a fault. Anytime we don't like something, I wish we did. Because, like, I know posting the reaction, the experience of us liking it versus the experience of us not liking it. I prefer us liking it,
Oh, yeah.
I wish I could just turn off my brain and love everything.
I
I can't. I'm too painfully self-aware.
Yes, it's a curse. And me being sober, it's even worse now. I've been suppressing it for years. And believe me, while watching it, I didn't give a fuck. I'm like, I don't like this. It doesn't hit. Same thing with Buffy. Same thing with this movie. It doesn't hit me until afterwards. I'm like, oh, fuck. It's like, this isn't going to be good. But I just can't I'm not going to put on a face.
And we shouldn't. Yeah.
I'm not going to put on a face for the reaction. I'm not going to go, wow. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah. And we still did react when stuff was cool. Like, we didn't bring it up, but the whole Spock line of, like, I was dead before. Like,
oh, yeah, yeah.
That stuff in the third act
Great
was cool.
lines.
Yeah.
Great
And we
lines,
gave it credit where it's due. But, like, yeah, you know. Anyway, my whole point was a little bit disappointed in you guys. like, some of you were new. Some of you were, you know, didn't see our Wrath of Khan video, whatever. But it's like, you know, for not a single person to predict that we wouldn't like this, at least to our face or in the Patreon takes. Maybe people thought this on their own and haven't said it.
Yeah.
But, like, for no one to throw that out there, like, hey, guys, maybe this isn't going to be their thing based on this, that was the most shocking to me after watching the movie.
Let's see. This one's from Nolan. I wonder how you boys will take Then Let Them Die in light of the whole shoot 'em bit, because I know I thought ahead to this film every time you guys brought it up. The whole shoot 'em thing is a meme because of how ridiculous it is. Because like, shut up, you know, it's funny. But then Kirk over and over saying "let them die." It's like they're animals. All this. It's like, whoa, okay. Shoot 'em was funny. Did I like it? No, but
it's become a meme because it's funny.
It's become a meme, but just how serious Kirk was, dropping all these lines multiple times. It's like, I didn't take it so well, but.
Yeah, and just last thing on the racism thing, I'll read this one from Bridge crew member James Bodis. I can't help but feel you guys are going to take issue with Kirk's hateful viewpoint on Klingons at first, thinking he's better than that or something. Obviously, you did more than me. Well, he's not. We know Kirk's more of a soldier than a diplomat, prone to obsession, and even though he was told to stay out of his life, and he never talked about it, cared that he had a son out there. His hatred was ugly, but understandable. And I just gotta say, James, you know, we can always rely on James to tell us we're wrong before he even knew our opinion. but I think I was actually more on his side there with that. I didn't find it a problem. You did, but the reason I wanted to read that one was you already brought it up. But when he said prone to obsession, that immediately took me back to that episode.
And it's literally called obsession.
Obsession, yeah. And you know, prone is a great word. When we were talking about it, I couldn't think of the word, but like when someone has a certain trait, you know, they're prone to something. Yeah, you can have an episode like obsession, but that's not just gonna fix, you know, like, so that's why I think I was more so believable. We've seen Kirk have not these exact issues, but like we've seen him have things that he kind of falls into the traps over and over. So I did, you know, I was a little bit more into it because of that. But
yeah, I get it. And Kirk didn't feel regrets about this whole thing until after he killed the monster. So in that episode, but oh well, just seeing him so far on one side is what bothered me.
Because it's clearly done for the movie.
Yeah, and
that's where I agree with you, is that, yes, this is for the movie. Like, it's not, no, like, they didn't watch TOS and go, you know what, Kirk would hate Klingons. It's like, no, it was written for this movie. But to me, it's just fine.
Yeah, because I've said it, I love the whole angel and devil being super logical, super emotional, and just seeing him so far on this side, it's just, but yeah.
Yeah, you did bring up, yeah, that's true.
But it's a movie. I get it. You got to start somewhere and somewhere else. I just wish it was something else. Okay, got to read this one from Nathan Walker. A little bit of cool trivia. When the script was finished, many people didn't like the racism in it, including Gene Roddenberry and William Shatner. However, when it was all said and done, Gene, on basically his deathbed, screened the film before it came out and gave it his final thumbs up approval, citing, "That's a good Star Trek film." Before you say anything, and then a response from Colin Meaney right below that, "Nowhere is it documented that Gene liked this movie." Quite the opposite. And he wasn't on his deathbed. He was very much up and around right up until he collapsed at the doctor's office.
You know, I love I love seeing the conversations that the patron takes about like different opinions, but nothing makes me laugh more than when people get in arguments about straight up facts. they're like when someone comments and they're like, "This happened," and then someone replies, "No, it didn't." What's your source on that? Oh, I laugh every time.
I love it. It makes my day.
This is from Ross Townsend. Utter pinnacle of Trek movies for me. And obviously not alone. A lot of people felt that. Everyone gets great character scenes and truly memorable lines. Uhura and Chekhov are my faves. Did you guys feel this was appropriate send-off for each cast member? And then he asked about Worf's cameo. We've already talked about that. But specifically each cast member, I think Sulu is really the only one that stands out.
Sulu's the only one that gets a good send-off.
Yeah, his is great.
He's got his own ship. He makes his own save. He's got his own lines. He's got his own crew. Saves the day in his own way. He's the only one that's got like a cool send-off. Like, I'm looking forward to his future. Everyone else is just...
And I saw a number of people comment like, "I'm glad everyone has things to do in this movie," or "I'm glad everyone got a part." Did people say things and do things? Yeah, but like I said earlier, that whole second act, like everyone's just stuck on the Enterprise, not able to find out this mystery while Kirk's gone. I didn't really feel like they had much to do. What Chekhov or her, Scotty, like, they didn't really have that much to do, in my opinion. I mean, at least in 5, Scotty and Uhura had that random relationship plot line, like,
which they just completely dropped.
Forgot about, which is fine. They could have broken up between whatever. But it's like, I didn't really feel that.
Instead of them like flying off into the sunset together, I would have rather, I don't care if it's as goofy as like the Sandlot, where they're all walking away and like fading into obscurity. Uhura went on to teach, it's like, this is the end. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm tired of like, they've done that a few times where it's like, oh, we're going to leave. Nah, it's like, oh, the Enterprise is being decommissioned. Nah, it's like, it's like, but it's like, oh, you're an admiral now. You can't be a captain anymore. Nah, it's like, this is the end. I don't want them to like ride off into the sun. I want to be like, this is the end.
Yeah, because they're not going to any more adventures. I like the ending, I will say that, but I agree that it's like, yeah, I mean, it just feels like they were like, yep, this is the ending. Like, they didn't give that much thought to, like, they were just kind of like, wouldn't this be nice? And yeah, it is nice.
It is nice, but also I just like,
But it's like, what are these characters going to do?
What are they?
Like, we have no idea. I mean, they're going to retire, I guess.
Are they galactic criminals for stealing the ship?
They're going to show up in Generations in a couple years, probably, hopefully.
So, it would be pretty cool if it's like direct, like they're in the same costumes. If they come into another time anomaly where they jump in the future and run into the TNG crew, it's like from that like.
Oh, from that moment.
Like from that moment.
Oh yeah.
Because it shows them like fade away into that sun. Like what if? How cool would it be if like they just caught some sort of stupid time anomaly where all of a sudden it's like, what the hell?
Yeah. And here's the thing. We thought the gap between us watching 5 and 6 was long, and it was. It's going to be quite a while before we watch Generations. So I don't want to speculate too much.
That's fine.
But I will say I have no idea what happens, and I hope I can like just put it out of my mind until it comes, and then actually be like surprised, because we've already been robbed of that. Like, obviously we know that there's some type of mix. But I've known that since I was a kid. Like, I saw the Generations, DVD cover, like, before I knew what Star Trek was. So it is what it is.
Damon Goss, did he notice that when Marty as fake Kirk points and says, kill him, he's the one, she points above real Kirk's head. Real Kirk then responds by pointing correctly. Marty gave herself away since she's accustomed to being shorter. She's accustomed to being shorter. Like, wouldn't she, like, never have shackles on if she's used to being the kid? Yeah,
I will say, rewatching it, because I read this take before my rewatch, William Shatner definitely does point above his head. They don't reference it in the movie. I don't know why he did that if his eye line was off, but I'm just gonna headcanon that that's the reason, because he definitely does point above his head, so it could be any reason, I guess.
I think it's just one of those like retcon type things, like
yeah.
I think Darth Vader kept the Boba Fett around because he sounded like Rex from the Clone Wars.
Well, but that's what I'm saying. It's headcanon. 100%. I don't think that's. But it's like, I'm fine with that.
Like, I don't buy it.
James H. I'm fully expecting a holy shit, is that Janice? And we did pop. That was our first big pop of the movie. Probably, honestly, one of the biggest. I enjoyed it quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And I also like that, Janice, man, she survived after getting fired from the show in the early first season. She's in, like, almost all the movies. And, small parts, small cameos, but it's nice.
It would have been a real great twist. What if there was a Klingon? Instead of it being, what if Janice was the fucking rat?
I thought that's what we were going for. And then you said Klingon, and I'm like, what?
My original idea is like, what if like her name's Gila and she's a Klingon? Humans show up and they at least and she's the daughter of Janice, like half Klingon.
Just the exact Sela reveal, but with her.
Yeah, the exact same thing.
Also, it was never like Janice never died or anything, so they just have to make up a story.
Yeah, and like the daughter would be like, and like it's Janice like as she looks now, and it's like her daughter, but they look exactly the same. Like they don't de-age her at all. This one's from Jeffrey. I've always had issues with this movie. Too many of the characters didn't ring true to me. There were major flaws in the plot. The constant quotes from other places got so tedious. Still, there was enough I enjoyed to give it a B. I put 1, 2, and 4 above it. Interesting that it doesn't put 3 above it. Any person that doesn't like Search for Spock, I have a problem with.
Personal vendetta.
Yeah, I just rewatched it last night. I'm like, this is a fucking film, man. I bought the 4K of it. I'm like, this is a film. You know what I mean?
And Search for Spock is so great because, again, it takes the elements of Star Trek, TOS, and it uses it to make a good movie. Like, something that could not have been done in the show, like them all going against Starfleet and all that. Like, it's a fucking movie plot. Like, it's just like, it's 10 out of 10.
All right, that was the title of the video, right? Why
Yeah.
Star Trek 3 is a perfect
Yeah.
Star Trek movie, right?
This right here is what kind of confused me. So, the first take is from John M. I think the first 45 minutes or so of this movie are perfect, and the final battle is great. Everything during the Rura Penthe section is meh, except for the Bones Kirk heart-to-heart. I agree with all of that.
Yeah.
The end battle, great. Like, I don't care as much about final battles, but like, yeah, I thought it was done well. But then he goes on to say, but overall, it's excellent, grade A. And like, I don't know, maybe it's just where I'm different, or we're different, or whatever, but like, I can agree with essentially that whole take, and it's like, I can't give the movie an A. It's like that whole Rura Penthe, that's like a half the movie. I mean, that's like a huge chunk of this movie. And then it goes on, Colm Meaney just says this, in agreement. Sam says, agreed. When I rewatch, I mostly skip Rura Penthe. And then James H., I've always thought, oh, he agrees with what I said. I always thought that was not his knee. It was a perfectly serviceable line, but they ruined it by having her go on and explain the joke. This whole thing is kind of like a capsulation of throughout the takes, everyone is saying how awesome this movie is and how great it is, but then they all admit that this part of the movie isn't good. I mean, maybe there are defenders of that part of the movie, but it's like, I think it just goes to show, again, the different perspective of like, look, guys, I love Star Trek, and I get it, but it's like, I can't just like be like, wow, that half of the movie sucked. Anyway, A. It's like, I can't. It's like, I have to be honest about how I feel about the movie. I'm not saying these people aren't being honest. I think they do love the movie. But I just feel like maybe it's the perspective of where we're coming from, or, watching it all condensed like this. I don't know. But it's just kind of like, I wish I could watch a movie and actively dislike a large part of it and then still love the movie. It's just very hard for me to do that.
To give something a 10, it's got to be perfect. And they just think, oh, it was great, I love everything about it. But I had a real big problem with this part. A. It's like, A is like a 9, like, out of 10.
Yeah.
It's like,
it's like if you didn't think, if it was like a one scene in the movie. Like, oh, this one scene I didn't care for.
But entire 30
minutes? It's like a full act of the movie.
Yeah.
It's like the main thing.
And to still give it an A, it's like...
And then like for multiple people to agree or say the same thing, someone to say they even skip that part of the movie. If I go back to rewatch any of these movies, like I'm not gonna skip any of it, I just wouldn't watch the movie. It's just like, if there's a movie that I don't want to watch, a big part of it, I won't watch it. I don't know. I think there's just a part of it that's like, maybe just watching it a little bit differently or what you want from it. People looking at this purely as like, oh, this is the last Star Trek TOS thing. I love it for that. Blah blah blah. Like yeah, that's awesome. I don't know. It was I did have a little bit of whiplash because of how much hype there was for this. Because with Wrath of Khan, it was very much like, oh, I get it. Like, I get why people love it, and I get why I don't, and it's because of the movie. It's not because of, like, anything Star Trek related, necessarily. Here, it just feels like, yeah, this movie's really good, and then, like, when I hear what they have to say about it, they're just, like, basically agreeing with everything I'm saying, but then I'm coming at it saying it's not that great, and other people are saying it's great. So I'm just trying to find, like, what is it about this movie? And it wraps back around to what I said at the beginning about experiences. Like, I don't want to think that that's the reason people love it, but it's like, what about the movie itself compared to the other 5 movies and compared to, TOS? People that said that this movie is right behind Wrath of Khan as their favorite movie. What about this movie is better than, 1, 3, 4, maybe 5 too, but like especially 1, 3, and 4? Because we watched all the movies and I don't get it.
I can't think of anything to list that would make them better than those, in my opinion. I don't think there's anything similar to a bad TOS episode or a bad any Star Trek episode. Good conversations. Everything else, no thanks. That's what this felt like. That's how I feel when I compare it to the other ones. And if you would ask me how I would describe it, and like if I were to compare it and like give me a reason why, good conversations, but it's similar to a bad TOS episode. It's like that's where it's going to be. And there's a film where I never skip a scene. Search for Spock.
Well, let's use that there. I do think it'd be fun. We can change this in the future, but I do think it'd be fun. We did watch all 6 movies, So to just do a quick off the top ranking, we did this for 1 through 4 before we were going into TNG. 1 through 6, we'll start at the bottom. I'm curious, is this at your bottom or is 5 beneath it?
Probably this one. I would have to rewatch 5. There's a lot of moments in 5 I love, some that I don't, but overall, I never had a problem with the other ones as much as I did this one.
Yeah, and what's really interesting is, I'm going to put 5 as my least favorite, but what's really interesting is, at least this movie, we could never sit here and have I don't know how long we've been going, 90-minute conversation about Star Trek 5. I mean, we had a pretty long conversation about it, but it was more about just like talking about what was fun about the movie. Like, to have such a heated, like, we disagreed on things, we tore things apart, we praised things. You know, this movie has a lot of stuff in it it causes conversation. So I'll give it that, which is surprising to me that it's not more polarizing because of that. But regardless,
Then my 5.
yeah. So I'll put 5 as my last one.
So my 5 is 5.
It's 5, and then 5 is where I would put this.
Okay.
So we just have those flipped, and then what would your 4 be? So we're going back to the first 4. Has anything changed? What's number 4?
4 is probably still 4.
4? Yeah.
Yeah, 4 is 4.
And I would put Wrath of Khan at 4.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay. Because my number, this is confusing. my number 3 is Wrath of Khan.
And my number 3 is Voyage Home. 4.
Number 2 is the motion picture.
And this is where we're going to be the same. Yeah, motion picture's my number 2. My number
Search for Spock!
Search for Spock. But let me just say, it's funny because it's like, if I was listening out, it's like, Search for Spock and motion picture are like this. Then there's a huge gap. And then it's Voyage Home, Wrath of Khan, and then another huge gap, and then 5 and 6, or 6 and 5. We had it differently. But 1 and 3 are like the go. They're like, I love both of those so much. 2 and 4, there's reasons I have problems with each of them. I like 4 more than 2. Yours is flipped, but I feel like they're kind of in that same class. And then 5 and 6 are the ones at the bottom for me.
All right, my turn. 6. 5. 4. 3. Wrath of Khan. 2. 3. Yeah. This gets so confusing. Motion picture, Search for Spock. Yeah. Really close. And because just how different they are, but how they succeed so well on what they're doing. I'm going to keep my hands here for the
And yeah, because motion picture was your favorite for a while. But
I fucking love motion picture.
Eventually, you liked Search for Spock more. But yeah, motion picture. I rewatched. So funny story. I was telling you about the free TV channels. There's a Miramax channel on my TV, and they were playing the motion picture. I sent some photos in the Discord. I don't know if you saw them, but it was the original, like, we watched the remastered on 4K.
How'd it look?
It was just like the original film, and surprisingly not bad. It wasn't that it looked bad. Some of it did. I didn't watch the full movie. I watched probably an hour of it. But it was more so that it's like you could just tell it's an old film. Like, we watch all of this now, TNG, even TOS, the movies, and it all looks beautiful watching 4K or Blu-ray. Going back and watching like what the actual film looked like, and it's like, oh, this was a film from 79, and it's like, it looks like a 79 film.
I'm sure it looked great in theaters in 79 from the actual film print, but when it finally gets to...
But even like all the Scotty and Kirk going around the Enterprise and all the shots, it looks good. Like, you can tell for that time it looked good.
I mean, they had to be proud of it because there's 40 minutes of just the Enterprise going into space dock. It must have looked good.
It looked good. And even I would even say, because of the film grain and the quality, like, Kirk and Scotty in that little shuttlecraft doesn't look as ridiculous with them green screened in, because it's like an older, it's not all cleaned up.
They can hide it,
Yeah. So, but there were some things where, like at the beginning when Kirk comes in the shuttle to San Francisco and then it parks, and you can just clearly tell it's like the whole set and then just his like special effect shuttle. Some of it was, not as good as the 4K. But
I've heard a discussion. I watched a Red Letter Media video, and I heard when they first get the V'ger and they're like on the actual outside of the ship, I've heard that looks really bad. When they're standing, I
didn't get that far in the movie, so I got to Aaliyah showed up, and then blah blah blah, and then I was like, all right, I had to do something, but I just like turned it on the background,
Yeah.
But yeah, man, I just obviously I've praised Search for Spock a lot, but just to wrap around, like, motion picture, I mean, it's got to be. I know Search for Spock is underrated, but like the motion pictures is really underrated. Like, we were told going into that, like, you're gonna fall asleep, it's super boring, no one likes this movie, like talk about an accomplishment. It's like that movie now, let alone 79, like it looks amazing, and it's just like an accomplishment. And I love the suits. so much better than these red ones.
I forgot to bring that up during the ugly red suits. I just wanted to say how much I hated them again. You know, the whole, the military. Like, Star Trek to me is about exploration. I relate Star Trek more to NASA than I do the military. And I hate this whole militaristic, Starfleet type thing. I love it, the exploration part of it. And the motion picture felt like an exploration film. And that's why I love it. This whole military Nicholas Meyer type shit, not for me. Not my thing.
Yeah.
And the whole, bring it back around, the whole Undiscovered Country is, the future. It's like, they've been doing, that's what they're doing. They're going forward, seek out new life and new civilizations. They've already been seeking out the Undiscovered Country. This is nothing new.
Also, I saw people saying in the Patreon takes that he wanted to name Wrath of Khan the Undiscovered Country. So he's had this title for a while, and it's like, just had to make it work here.
You're going to do what I want.
Yeah. Jeez, yeah, and about the military thing, I think it actually, especially TOS, I agree with you. TNG, I think it actually works a little bit more. Like, they definitely have like a little bit more of a military, like, Picard, the captain, Riker is definitely militaristic as number one. It works a little bit more. It's still not like my thing, but it comes out, it's a little bit funny, like in TNG, like there's a scenes where like Riker's like, we're not a military ship, and I'm like, come on, Riker. It's like you guys get in fights every week. But but it's like there are episodes like Balance of Terror, right? It's like that's a very militaristic, but it's good. It can be done well and not well, but I agree with you for the most part, especially TOS. I always loved that it just felt like they're just on a ship out there in space, and it's like good luck, and it's like
it felt as if they were traveling the Twilight Zone. We're not watching an episode of the Twilight Zone. They were going in their own Twilight Zone. That's why it was so fun. It was like explorative, like
going where no man has gone before.
No one has gone before, and how limitless it was. And then we just go to this whole military type stuff. Got to bring up the Cold War. It's like, do something else. Other stuff happened. You can pull from other stuff, but it doesn't have to be like a shot-for-shot remake of the Cold War.
And I said earlier, I will just say, it is at least nice. When we were going through the movies, I really liked how they were each almost like a different genre. And this one still is, it's a mystery whodunit, even though it's unfortunately not a good one. But it's a different type of thing. But yeah, there's the war element, and it's just, it's probably, I'm trying to think back, it's probably the biggest mixed bag of the six. Because there's stuff I really love in here. And like, I used to think that about 5, I think, but it's like, thinking back, it's like 5 is just, it's fun, but not that great. And this one's just like, wow, there's stuff I really love, and there's stuff I really don't. So, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, 5 has that great campfire ending scene, the rock climbing scene, and the rocket boots. It just felt like William Shatner just, off the cuff, just doing whatever he wanted. And it felt fun and genuine. It's ridiculous. And this just felt, it didn't feel good.
Yeah. I still think I definitely enjoyed it a little more than you. I mean, obviously you ranked it last. I put it above 5, but can I just say, we can end it here if you want. Like, we probably been talking for close to 2 hours. I mean, I just love that we're doing this. Like, I just laugh because it's like, I'm thinking about some people who probably aren't the people watching this right now. If you are, thank you. But like the people, I just wanted to watch Star Trek 6 with you guys. And it's like, and there's nothing wrong with that. Like, I hope people did enjoy that. And you really didn't, when I was going back editing it, you really didn't really shut off until about an hour 10, hour 15. So there's a good, hour in there. Right? I think overall it was a decent reaction. But, I know that there's that part of the audience that doesn't give a shit about any of this 2-hour conversation that we had. Or that they started to watch it and we started to say negative things and they turned it off. And that's fine. That's totally cool. But regardless of any of that, I just love that we do this, and I love that this is the channel, because like, when else in our life would we ever be able to do this?
I can't, thank God. I remember texting you on the way home, about the movie, and just about the other movies we've seen about Nosferatu. I'm so glad I get to get this out vocally, because text is not enough. This is therapy for me.
And can you imagine watching this movie, if we just did straight up reactions and then that's pretty good, okay, bye. Or I didn't really like that one, okay, bye. And it's like, imagine just not being able to talk about this. And we could do it ourselves, not on camera. But it's still, it's the fact that, not everyone, I think this video is kind of the perfect example of it. It's going to be, hey, is this channel for you? And if it's not, that's okay. But it's that's why I love the channel and love doing this, whether it's Star Trek or anything else, because there's not a lot of movies, as much as we give shit to this, that we could sit here and talk for 2 hours about, and it's just, I think it's a really cool thing.
Yeah. So, thanks for coming to the rise and fall of the target audience. if anyone's here, once the reaction's up, I have a feeling that it's going to be over.
This video is like the perfect, like, this is us in our rawest form.
Yes.
Nothing about this is inauthentic. Nothing about this is like, you know, like we said every 2 hours and talked about what we liked and didn't because we love Star Trek. But regardless, even if it's not Star Trek, you know, if it's some of the stuff that was more controversial that we've done, like, you know, Buffy or Battlestar Galactica or whatever, it's like, no, we didn't sit down and talk for 2 hours about that, but, you know, it was still authentic and you know, we talked about what we liked and didn't, and I just, yeah, I don't know, man. It's cool stuff.
It is. I'm trying to delay ending this as far as possible because if it doesn't end, it doesn't get posted, and people don't rip us apart.
My least favorite part of the third act, the missile coming towards the ship. It should be an awesome moment, blowing up this invisible ship. To be or not to be.
Like, oh my God.
Fuck yourself, Nicholas Meyer. like what? Like, stop.
It's like, oh, Khan quoted Moby Dick, so I'll have Chang quote Shakespeare. And Chang says, oh, your favorite author, Kirk, Shakespeare. It's like Kirk never said that Shakespeare was his favorite author ever. It's like, oh, you should read it in the original Klingon. It's like, okay, so Chang, you're so super about, you know, Klingon culture and all this, you know, better, you know, die fighting and live on our knees, but you're aware of Shakespeare and are a fan of his cult. That was just a weird thing to me.
I didn't, yeah, and I didn't even go that deep with it. I just took it as like, as a movie.
Oh yeah, as
just
a movie.
that
Oh,
moment.
yeah, just a horrible
Just
moment.
To be. I'm like, stop.
The ending felt very bad action movie where, you know, oh, you restored my father's faith, and Kirk says, oh, you restored my son David's faith. I rewatched Search for Spock. David like never mentioned Klingons or one, you know, future with the Klingons. It's just one of those moments. Oh, movie moment. Oh, my father, my son, and then it felt like that Family Guy joke where like the one guy starts to clap.
It was like a comical clap.
Yeah, it was like, and then everyone starts clapping, and I guarantee no one heard what they said. And I'm just like, what is this? And the slowest assassin of all time, you know, whatever. Yeah.
Okay.